art is a lot more fun to look at than numbers.
Yeah.
And it gives numbers meaning. And I think that's huge. And one of the things, if I kind of sidetracked a little bit here, that's important is we do that. I think teachers and parents do that really well with the little kids. And then we get to, junior high, middle school, around grade 7 to 9, and we forget they need those pictures. And we assume they can make these connections in their head already when they can't. Like I said, if we're talking about X is a variable, it's a very unknown number. And I'm sure me just talking about algebra is giving our listeners like a little
Yeah.
bit of math anxiety.
Being an artist can be a heck of a ride, but you're not alone. On Journey of the Art, we tell inspiring stories of artists and chat with those who support us on this path. I'm your host, Lola Opatayo, writer, editor, singer, and all-round lover of words. Come with me on the journey. Hello again, and welcome to Journey of the Art. I'm so excited to speak to today's guest, as I think our conversation is one that parents, creatives, and teachers will find useful. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Mahal, a certified math teacher and digital creator who's using her platform to teach math, chemistry, biology, and general science. Jennifer is also the author of 2 children's books, The Shape of Roti and Himat's Courage. And today, we're going to discuss ways that art or creativity can be used to teach math. Before I get ahead of myself, welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You are very welcome. I'm equally excited about this episode because I think that there are so many intersection points between math and the arts, even though there seems to be a gulf between them. Well, before we begin the conversation, if you don't know, you can find Journey of the Art wherever you get your podcasts. So check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms to listen on the go, follow the show, and leave a comment. This really helps us to boost our visibility so more folks like you can discover us and join the community. Also, as always, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram, so please follow the show at Journey of the Art Pod. And today I have another ask of you. If you love the show, please don't keep it to yourself. Tell someone about Journey of the Art. Okay, Jennifer, now we begin. To start us off, I feel like I should ask what I think might be an obvious question, but I'm going to ask anyway. What was your favorite subject as a child?
Yeah, good. That's a great question. So, it definitely was math and science. And part of the reason I ended up going into teaching was, believe it or not, in grade 9, I actually struggled with math quite a bit. There were different things I had to learn, and I ended up realizing like once you know how to study and know how to learn, it becomes very fulfilling. And
Mm,
it's actually one of the reasons I decided to do what I do is it's so powerful to help students learn
right,
something as tricky as math.
right.
And then, of course, it became my favorite subject because I knew how to handle it, knew how to explain it, and it literally became my career.
Right, right. I love what you said about how powerful it is to help children learn something that, feels very complicated. So I just have a follow-up question on that. How did you get through that phase in grade 9 when you struggled with it? Was there someone who helped you, some strategy that you used? How did you get through it?
Such a great question. So, I actually ended up getting a tutor. Well, I shouldn't say that. My mom made sure I got a tutor to get some extra help.
Shout out
And
to mom.
yeah, exactly. Shout out to my mom. And once I was able to have some of those complex steps be broken down using things like, pictures to help me learn, annotating on word problems, and really understanding the complex parts of algebra. And in grade 9, it was polynomials. I, again, started to grasp how easy it could be. And then I knew that if I can use those same strategies, and obviously I use multiple strategies in my teaching, again, kids can start to feel successful. And we know once we as adults or even kids start to feel successful in a certain area, we're going to have our confidence being boosted, and it's going to leak into other areas of our lives. So I think
Right.
that's more of the power that I was speaking about. And I think that's so important with any day-to-day life and really any career, to be honest.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think there's so much power in knowing that I can work this difficult problem. Um, and so I want to follow up on what you were talking about. You talked about using pictures and annotating math problems. So this is a bit of a segue into your journey into math and the sciences. Were there any intersections with the arts?
Oh, absolutely. So I think I'll explain one of the ways I actually introduce the topic in the classroom, like when I'm teaching. But one of the things I think, because kind of what you and I were talking about before, because there is this big gap between art and math, often if you are good at art and you're really creative, you tend to not see yourself as being good at math. When from my perspective, the two are actually quite linked when we think of the world of especially geometry.
Right.
So if we think of something as simple as a shape, which obviously, of course, coincides with my book, which we'll talk about in a moment, but if we think of something as simple as the shape of a square, that allows you to actually access things like area, perimeter, 3D shapes, so volume. So all of a sudden, this thing that we see every day, I literally have a rectangle above my head and my
Yeah.
decor. We can connect that to math, and this thing that seemed so complex at the beginning ends up being a little bit more manageable. And again, that's going to create that success for our students, or my students, I guess.
Right, right, right. I love that. I love that because I was doing some research. I was like, okay, where are the convergence points between math and the arts? And that's exactly what I found out. Like, if you look at geometry, even the shape of a poem sometimes can be manipulated to tell a mathematical story. So I do love that you are able to find those points. So let's address the
Absolutely.
elephant in the room because I think you actually did touch on it. There is a common notion that math is boring and difficult, but you are finding ways to teach math in the most interesting ways. So, to what extent would you say that the arts are important for teaching math?
Oh, such a good question. So if we're solely talking about the arts, whether we talk about that from an art piece like a two-dimensional shape, like a picture, to the 3D shape of a volume, I think they're so interconnected. The simplest example I'll give, and if we need to, I can like grab the physical example as well. But
Yeah,
um, when we learn to count, we literally use things to count as children. We'll use, I know my little cousin, he was using like his sister's beads to count.
right,
In the classroom they use those the base 10 blocks.
right,
So
right,
a little cube to represent 1, 10 cubes to represent 10, and the squares to represent 100. That is art. And that same visualization of this is a number and here's what it looks like, I think is so important for actually going through mathematical calculations. Whether it's as simple as you're going to the grocery store and you're saying, oh, this costs a certain amount of dollars. That's what that looks like using the base 10 blocks, or if we're even going back to like the geometry and the actual calculations that need to be done with that. I think having the art gives us that visual representation to help bridge that gap, but it also gives a buy-in to students because art is a lot more fun to look at than numbers,
yeah,
and it gives numbers meaning, and I think that's huge. And one of the things, if I kind of sidetracked a little bit here, that's important is we do that. I think teachers and parents do that really well with the little kids. And then we get to, junior high, middle school, around grade 7 to 9, and we forget they need those pictures. So using something as simple as an algebra tile, where one sort of square represents X. Again, we're going back to the learning that they've done
right,
as a kid, but we get to visualize, oh, X is this shape. And now I need to know what X means. Or now this shape times this shape makes a whole different shape. Well, that's X times X, and that's making X squared. So we get to connect it to something that feels a bit more light. And kind of decreases the fearful math anxiety
Right,
that I think a lot of people experience.
right, right. I think that is a very important thing that you touched on. That um, space of time between grade 7 and grade 9, where we kind of throw away the childish, I'm using air quotes here, the childish ways that we use to get children engaged in math. What do you think informs that decision to take away the fun from math?
Such a good question as well. I think there's a notion that, from my perspective as a teacher, and I don't know if every teacher will agree with me, but definitely my perspective is that I think we assume because these teenagers have they almost are adults, right? Some of the grade 10s are taller than probably both you and I, right? They're
Yeah.
big kids. So we assume they have an adult brain. We assume they can make these connections in their head already when they can't. Like I said, if we're talking about X is a variable. It's a very unknown number. And I'm sure me just talking about algebra is giving our listeners like a little
Yeah.
bit of math anxiety. But the second we say, hey, this is what this is, it's a square or a rectangle, and it means this many numbers, again, you can bridge that gap. So I feel like we forget that our teenagers are still kids. And by bringing the math manipulatives in, by bringing in these tangible creative parts, even in the arts, we are going to get that buy-in, but it also feels fun and playful.
Hmm.
And again, it's going to reduce that stress that I think a lot of people have around math.
Right. So I do still want to talk about this, and then maybe this is because I have a kid in that age range. But how do you? Because I know that for kids of that age, they, as much as we are trying to take away the childish stuff away from them, they are also walking away from that childish um from those elements. So how do you? I guess what is the middle ground? How do you help that child access that creative side to be able to embrace math while honoring the new season that they're going into, that season of adulthood? What are some strategies, some creative strategies that you use to help kids connect to math, especially kids who are not, moving away from, pre-teens and all of that into teenagehood? What are some creative strategies that you use?
Again, amazing question. So part of the way I kind of frame everything is applying it to real life situations. I think if we can apply it to a real life situation, then they understand the why behind this. So one of my favorite examples is surface area. So surface area is a very it can be a very complex concept. So we're
Just feel
talking
free to
about,
use a physical.
yeah, I was just gonna say I'm
Feel free
looking
to use a
around.
demonstrate
I'll
to
grab my
demonstrate if you
I'll
want.
grab my tissue box here. I'll use that as an example. And then
Okay.
remind me if you need me to send you the video. I've got the video of the kids that made the actual stuff that I'm going to talk
Oh,
about.
amazing,
So I
amazing.
can totally send that your way. But so let's say we're looking at like the 3D shape of this. It's a tissue box for our listeners, right? And we're talking about surface area. So we are looking at what is the area of the top, the bottom, the sides, the parts, um, I guess the other sides of the box, right? So it's a three-dimensional shape, and they have to figure out the surface area. In my classroom, what I did is I gave them, they had to bring recyclables. That's why I decided to use the tissue box. And they had to wrap it in wrapping paper.
Okay.
And so that challenges them to really measure out the surface area of each side because they need the right amount of wrapping paper to wrap their object. And the challenge was they only had an extra, I think I gave them, if my students are listening, they're going to be like, no, you didn't, Miss Mall. But I think it was an extra 10 centimeters square for just any overlap. But they had to calculate all the sides, come to me. I cut the paper. They went back to their desks and actually wrapped up their boxes. And then, it becomes artsy because we get to use nice gift wrap paper. We get to use the crafting side that my students have. It's a real life problem because if you are painting the walls of your home, you need to know how much paint you're going to need. You need to calculate how
Yeah.
much that's going to cost. It also, ties into um, them even having that concept of, oh, 10 centimeters squared is actually not that huge. So now I really need to think about my calculations, or maybe I thought I was calculating the area of this side correctly, but I wasn't. And it gets them really thinking about using these materials in a real world way, but also helping in their learning.
Right. That's an amazing example. And I was, I'm just here thinking, well, I wish I had a teacher like you when I was growing up. My life would have been better.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. I really do.
But I think it's very interesting when we find these levers that will help children access complicated topics. So, shout out to you for doing amazing work.
Thank you so much.
So, let's talk about balance. Do you experience any challenges balancing your creative side and your analytical math side? Because you are very creative. Like you may be a math teacher, but you have lights in the background, you have colors, your nails. Like I look like the math teacher right now.
Oh, it's so cute. Balance is again, you've got amazing questions, by the way.
Good.
Um,
I'm glad. I'm glad. That is what I always aim for.
I appreciate them so much. I feel like I feel the way you ask the questions, it's like the type of question, it's like you've known me forever. Um,
That's this is the kind of feedback. Yeah. Okay. Bringing it in.
You're doing a great job. My
Thank
teacher
you.
side's coming out. I need you to know you're doing amazing. Um, so I actually really, I am very, very creative. I do have that huge side. It's always been told to me. I've always been like that ever since I think um, I was with my grandma, and I remember she was sewing by hand, and I'm 3 years old, and I was like, Nanny, I want to do that too. And she's like showing me how to do that. Um, because I am creative, it definitely leaks into a lot of my work.
Mm,
To answer your question, if there are restrictions put, which does happen, the pandemic is a great example where a lot of my physical creativity was put at a stall, or sometimes different schools, different types of parents have different expectations in how you're going to teach math. So, personally speaking, if I don't have that creative outlet, I really actually feel I don't know if the right word is suffocated, but I feel held back in expressing that. And therefore, I feel like I can't do a good job as a teacher and as a math teacher. So, one of the examples to talk about that is in October of 2021, just kind of coming off the pandemic, we're having restrictions, we're not having restrictions. Kids are wearing masks to school. I really felt like my creative side was lacking because the kids still weren't able to physically get out of their desks and move around with each other. So one of the ways I combated that was doing a digital escape room. So the kids had to watch a video hook where something was happening, and then they had to answer questions, and the questions would reveal a clue. Once all the clues were connected together, it answered the question to the video hook. And that's the way I had to like balance out that creative side, especially with that course load. I was only teaching math and science. I didn't have another option to put my creativity in.
right.
And so I definitely find outlets to get that. Otherwise, without using that creativity, I'm not in a good spot. I feel like something's missing, you know what I
Right.
mean?
I totally get that. I totally get that. And I see that creative side of you on YouTube because you have a YouTube channel, you're active on Instagram, you're on TikTok. Talk to me a little bit about how you are interacting with people on those platforms. Is there a part of you that's analytical that, or maybe just a little reserved because you are, again, analytical that struggles to engage with people on those platforms in a way that someone who is, I guess, more creative wouldn't have challenges?
I think so. I think it's probably the overthinking that I have. Even I think before we started recording, even what I was telling you, just being really nervous to put my full self out there.
Right.
I think that can always be a little tricky. I think part of the analytical part, I never actually thought about it as my analytical brain, but I really want my students and my parents to see my professional side and my creative side. But I think that's also a fine line because um, sometimes there's this perception, and maybe this is again in my analytical brain, where if you are, I don't know if the right word is too creative. I don't think that's the right word. But if you're, I think there's still a notion that if you are using social media, it might just be reserved for fun things as opposed to, a teaching platform. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best answer for that one, but I think there's a little bit of a struggle there.
Right.
In terms of engagement, what I really just want to do is showcase my work to everybody and showcase the different ways we can teach math for kids to feel engaged, but also other teachers to be like, oh, that's such a cool idea. I want to do that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kind of inspire them that way.
Yeah, and I just want to take this moment to encourage you because I did visit all of your platforms and I think you're doing amazing work. And I'm not just saying that because you're my guest and I'm trying to be civil, but because I really do believe that you're doing great work. And like it's like you rightly said, there's a fear of, how much of myself do I want to show to the audience? Will I be considered serious?
Yes.
And then you're also trying to talk about something so complex and maybe a bit abstract in a world where everyone's, well, maybe not everyone, but where there's a lot of sensational content, right? And your content isn't the most fun thing, just like almost just like the conversations we're having. So I see you and I appreciate the work that you're doing. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you so much. See, that was the feedback I needed.
You're welcome. All right, let's zoom into your book, The Shape of Roti. In the book, the children are rolling out dough. Yes, that's the beautiful cover. The children are rolling out dough, and each child is on their own discovery to create and appreciate a mathematical concept. How important is it to allow children to take an individualized approach to learning math and the sciences?
Oh, it's so important. So with the book, one of the reasons I added the making roti part is when I was a kid and I would see, family members making roti, when you're rolling out dough, and just as a side note, for those of you that don't know, roti is a common bread that's eaten by many South Asian cultures, almost all around the world. It's like naan, but thinner, and it's often rolled out, not to spoil the book, but in a circle. Um, it's so important because I think food really brings people together, and kids naturally have an attraction to food.
Yeah,
And especially something like dough, it feels like Play-Doh. Like I remember being little and playing with it and seeing my younger cousins playing with it. And so if we can think of something that we can mold in our hands like clay or Play-Doh, we are touching in on that art. And then we're touching in this book in particular, touching into shapes
mm,
and really thinking about how we can mold things in our hands to represent physical things like shapes. And again, we're getting that connection
right.
of math into the real world at such a young age. They don't even know they're doing math. They're just making shapes. And
Yeah,
I think that is so important. And it also helps with things like fine motor skills at that age. So very, very important to be individualized. And with the case of the book, it was really individualized with the culture. But again, like anyone who has baked with young kids and you've got that dough, it's very moldable, tangible. It gets them feeling things and moving things around that I think can inspire them in different forms of learning.
right, right. So in the end of the book, Nanny takes steps in to make the final shape. And while the children have done well creating different shapes for the dough, Nanny's shape results in the roti. And I'm saying that wrong because I heard you say it differently. Roti?
Yes, yes, that's right. You got
Perfect.
it.
Okay. So she connects the dots for the children, showing them that mathematical concepts pervade our everyday lives, just as we've been talking about. But she's done this through an artistic concept. And I see this as a metaphor for the importance of good teachers in helping to deconstruct complex ideas, particularly for people who find a subject like math challenging. What are your thoughts on this?
That was more or less what I was going for. So I actually chose
Amazing.
it to be, you got it. Yeah, I'm going to pull the page that you're talking about because I think there's two beautiful things. And actually, before I do that, if I can just give a small shout out to my illustrator.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Her name is Muncie. She was or is absolutely amazing. I gave her the concept of the book. There were a few things that I was very key that needed to happen in there. And she lives in India. She was born and raised there. So she added some really nice Indian touches that me being born and raised in Canada wouldn't have. And
Yeah.
I love it. And the page that you're talking about is
Yes, that's
literally
the
one of
one.
my favorite pages. She's wearing an Indian linga. She's spinning. We get the beautiful circle. Then there's circles in the circle, like just really beautiful ways to showcase how math is in art. To go back to your amazing question, that is definitely what I did. Nani is, it means grandmother, but it's maternal grandmother. So I wanted to show that our maternal grandmothers have so much wisdom
Hmm.
that while the kids are navigating this complex thing and they're grasping with the different concepts and they're showing resilience as they're making a new shape each time, ultimately it's Nani who comes by and saves the day by saying, hold on, you know what, this is how we do it. And
Right.
she's taking it, rolling out the dough. And I just think that's so important because grandmothers have such a strong influence. And grandmothers are just as amazing, obviously, as paternal, but there's something to be said about that lineage of
Yeah.
maternal role models that I think don't always get represented. So I specifically chose that for this book, to showcase the wisdom that they have and also the help and the knowledge they have that shape us and who we are and how we become adults.
Yes, absolutely. 100% spot on. Like I'm thinking about my maternal grandmothers as you're talking, and all of them, I mean, I would say even 4 generations back, were businesswomen. And they didn't have a formal Western education, but they knew their numbers, they knew their business. Even my mom is entrepreneurial, and I feel like I've come from a generation of women who are entrepreneurial by nature. And you can't be that way. Well, you can't be as effective an entrepreneur if you're not good with math, right? You need to be able to calculate how much money is coming in, how many goods did I buy, who's owing me, how much do I need to save to restock my inventory. And I think that there's so much that we can learn from people who don't have the formalized Western education. So thank you
Absolutely.
for pointing that out.
Of course. Absolutely.
So let's talk about some writing tips for teachers. What are some strategies that you can share for teachers who are navigating writing for the first time?
Okay, absolutely. So, from my perspective with both of the books, it was about finding a niche that wasn't there. So, like with both my books, they're Indian kids on the covers.
Yeah.
And growing up, I never got to see any of that.
Hmm.
And I thought it was very important that, you know, as I'm in a position where I'm with children all the time to create that space for them. And especially when I look at, you know, my younger cousins, I want them to be able to read a book and say, "Hey, that's me. Hey, that's the food that I eat."
Right.
So I think when it comes to teachers writing books, I think that's the first thing we have to look at is say, okay, what are some things that our kids are struggling with right now? And how do I turn that into a story that can really inspire our kids? And that can be from any form of avenue. Of course, I'm taking the representation because that's the most important to me, but that could be any form. It could even just be words, it could be like the rhyming. There's that children's book by BJ Novak, where it's literally a book with no pictures.
Hmm.
And what a fun concept for that, because it's ironic that there's no art in it, but the words themselves are art.
Yes.
And that's another avenue to show kids like you don't have to have drawing skills if you don't need. There's other ways to get what you want. So I think really seeing something that's missing, because I think as teachers we know it, we can feel it, the kids bring it to our attention. And so how do we use our knowledge and how do we use our abilities to tell a story to meet that need and that piece that they might be missing?
Right. I really love that, what you just said about looking for the pieces that are missing, because I think there's the propensity to just follow the bandwagon and do what everybody else is doing. But I think the books that really stand out, especially as a teacher, because you get to see so many kids, and these kids are like patterns. You see what's missing, right? So thank you for sharing that. Did you have any challenges writing the book?
Um, Both of them are just,
Both of
would
them.
you
Let's
want
talk
to,
about both of
yeah.
them.
Okay, so definitely lots of challenges. With Him It's Courage, I had actually done a different version of it before, and then I redid it. The first challenge, so Him It's Courage is about a boy who gets bullied for his turban, which that was kind of the challenge that I actually went through in the sense of when I was talking to other teachers. So um, my, I shouldn't say my coworkers, but friends that I went to school with. And I said, hey, have you ever noticed that so and so might have gotten bullied? They didn't notice that.
Right.
And so that was a challenge for me because I think, unless if you are of that culture, of that religion, of that race, however you want to word it, you might not be aware of that situation.
Hmm.
Growing up now, I know friends that were bullied for having any sort of headdress, right? It doesn't have to be the Sikh turban, any sort of headdress or any sort of cultural thing that they bring to school. And a teacher might not always be aware of that if they didn't grow up in that environment. Not to say that they're not, because I've met tons of amazing teachers that are. So I think that was a challenge for me, is showcasing to other adults that this is a problem
Right.
that our community faces. Um, and then the other aspect of that was finding a way to write really sensitive topics in kid friendly language. And so that kids could know, hey, you know what? That is online bullying.
Right.
That does happen. That's not okay. How do I solve that problem? Well, maybe I'm going to go talk to a parent. I'm going to talk to my teacher. I might even have the support there to talk to the people that are bullying me, or rightfully so, I might not. And just kind of navigating through those relationships that end up happening. So that one was, it was tricky to navigate, but I think it needed to be done because, like I said, kids are being bullied for their
Right.
when they bring cultural attire to school. That's probably
Right.
the best way to put it. And then with the Shape of Roti, I wouldn't say it was a larger challenge, but it was more just making, because of my analytical brain, as you so nicely put it, making these shapes and the characters very playful,
Hmm.
so little children can really get a buy-in. What I didn't mention actually is the two characters are actually named after my little cousins.
Oh,
They're actually real.
nice.
They're actually like a twin boy and sister, and so I think that's always kind of cute.
But they will, you can be their favorite aunt.
I think so. I hope
Yeah.
so. I
Oh,
better
favorite
be.
cousin, because you're, yeah.
Well, in our culture, we actually cousins. There's no real word in our language for cousins, so
Oh,
we do call them like their dad is like my brother, and their kids are my niece and nephew. In our language, they call me aunt. So yeah, so you're right on the nose with that.
yeah. That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's, because when I was reading, I thought that one of the challenges would be, making it playful, because this is, again, as we said, a subject that can be very tough to break into, but making it playful. And I think you did an amazing job doing that, and also eh, showing how children can be involved in math. And so it's not a prescriptive approach like you do this and do that, but it's more of um, an individual engagement plus a community effort to understand math and realize that this subject is more integral to our lives than we can imagine.
Absolutely, yes. You said it right there. The fact that it can be connected to so many different things, I think that's the importance of it. You got it.
Well, Jennifer, thanks for coming on the show and sharing about the amazing work you're doing. And thank you for joining us today if you're listening or watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell someone about the podcast. And if you'd like to get Jennifer's books or sign up for personalized coaching, check out the show notes or the description box if you're watching on YouTube. Also, you can find Jennifer on YouTube and social media. So TikTok, Instagram, and where else?
YouTube, and then my website as well. So
Okay.
the handle for that, for all of it, is my last name. So it's ms_Mahal.
Okay, perfect. But I was going to put the links
Yeah,
anyway, but
I knew
still
you
good.
would.
All right. Thank you for coming. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next episode. On the next episode, I'll be chatting with another inspiring artist. But before then, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this show and this episode. Feel free to drop me a note here or send me a DM on Instagram at Journey of the Art Pod. Finally, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or follow and rate the show if you're listening elsewhere. Help me connect with other artists who need a dose of inspiration today. Until next time, stay on the journey of your art.